Today, top 5 questions I get asked as a spoon carver. Let's do this. This is where the magic happens. It's more of a workspace than a shop. Pause. Thanks for coming in here, everybody. So, in the years that I've been doing this, I've come across a lot of people that have asked me a lot of questions, a lot of them being the same thing over and over, which is totally fine. And it is going to be answered right now. I don't even know what the fuck that was. One of the top questions that we get asked all the time, I don't even have to look at the paper. What kind of tools do you need to get started in spoon carving? And how many? And all that kind of stuff. So the tool racket is just that. It's crazy. When you get into anything, it's crazy. But here's in spoon carving, it's crazy as well too. There's so many independent makers. There's so many like larger brands, corporations, and companies that are coming out with a lot of stuff for wood carving. It's crazy. But what you want to do, the beginner and somebody who's starting out, is just go and get yourself a set of 3 tools. That's typically all you need if you're going to be going down the green wood carving kind of route. There's many avenues to shoot once you get into it if you decide to, but the biggest thing that will help you through a lot of it is going to be a solid straight knife, it's going to be a solid hook knife, and it's going to be a solid axe. When I mean solid, I mean like just decent. It doesn't mean going out and spending top dollar on equipment that you don't know how to use. It means going down to your hardware store or using what you have in your house already. That's it. That's all. You don't need much more than that. There's much more to gather after that if you decide to take it serious, but for the most part, that's it. Just those 3 tools. Next question. What is the best wood to use? Well, that's a super subjective question. It's based off of a kind of a demographic as to where you are on the planet. Where are you in the world? So a lot of people only have access to specific species, but if you want the real rundown of what to do, use whatever wood is close to you and that is non-toxic, if you can do the research on what kind of wood you are using, and practice away. It's gonna not make much sense because you're gonna be like, this is a bit rough wood, or it's too dense, or it's very tubular, kind of like oak and things like that, meaning the grain, it's kind of acting weird. Like, you need to practice and try, if you enjoy it, as much as you can on whatever you can. So there really should be no set rule as to what you're using. Once you get into it a little bit further and want to refine yourself, well then start using woods that, for me, how I usually do it, it's more along the lines of what food would you eat with it, you know? So I personally shoot for fruit woods. Doesn't necessarily have to be that, but I do. Fruit and nut woods. So I use a lot of walnut, apple, pear when available, peach when available as well too, lots of cherry, plum, all kinds of stuff in that regard. But that's also relative to where I am right now in the Okanagan Valley in British Columbia, Canada. So because of that, we have a different variety of fruit woods that I can use. And then across Canada where I'm at, it just varies where it is geographically different. So again, that's why the suggestion is go ahead and just use whatever wood that you have available. Make sure it's green wood though. Anybody can grab a board and start carving, but you're gonna break your hands and break your tools. Go outside and get a fresh cut down log or something like that from a storm down tree. I don't suggest going out and just taking a tree down and just sort of seeing what you can do. Try to use wood that's already naturally come down, or somebody's developing on a property or something like that. They're just taking an old tree down or whatever. You know, try to shoot for that in order to find it, but that's a different question. So try to stay away from coniferous trees, you know, your spruces, your pines, tamarack. I mean, I can go on and on and on. Coniferous trees, it's okay, but they're very resinous and sticky. On top of that, they just carve differently. You can go ahead and do that, but they're more reserved for other things than sort of delicate spoon carving or bowl carving or cup carving. So again, stick to fruit woods, nut woods, things like that. Maple's very good, but the bottom line is literally use whatever you can get your hands on, and then try with that. Stay away from the toxic trees, and there's a whole listing of them out there and stuff like that. So on to number 3. Do you accidentally cut yourself often? So that was a question that I was asked basically my first year, and then pretty much every year after, depending on who you're speaking with and what venue kind of thing or in what context. But yeah, do I accidentally cut myself often? Now, not as often. Just because as anything you practice, you get better. But when I first started, I definitely cut myself. I wasn't sure of technique. I wasn't sure of what was the proper way to do things, and a lot of it was always nicks and cuts. It was never very serious. Later on, it got a little serious. I have cut myself a couple of times around the block. One with the axe before, and it was more of a top swing. It wasn't the actual blade itself. It was the tip of the axe kind of thing, or the toe. It was just one of those things, and I can describe it, but it cut me in the hand kind of thing. And then I had to get, I think, a stitch or two, but that was basically it. And it was just because of something that I was trying to do, again, like everybody, in a hurry. So I try now not to frequently try at all. But there is safety equipment to use and things like that. If you want to try to do more, just to be able to, not cut yourself and get out of the way of that blade kind of thing. Which leads us into the fourth question: what safety measures do you use in order to carve? Well, first things first is study. Study the moves, study their knife grip, study about how to position yourself at the carving block or the chopping block. If you're using other tools like going ahead and carving bowls out, and maybe you've got a big bowl made and things like that, knowing your body position. So that's one of the bigger things, is just knowing, again, how to grip the tools correctly, where your body is, where others are around you, if there is any, and then trying to go as slow as possible until you get comfortable where you can build that speed. So that's one of the best safety tips I can actually offer. But when it comes to do I take any measures, the remainder is, when you're carving, wear gloves. I have a bunch of gloves. If it's that kind of day, or if it's wetter wood where you can slip, I'll just put the gloves on because I'd rather not. And there's been many a times where I've been like, oh, and I'm like, oh, thank God, and I'm wearing the gloves. I do that every now and again. I do it when it's cold. I do it when the wood, again, is slippery or wet. So that's how I do it. Now, I don't carve with a glove all the time. I can pick up a spoon and a knife and be completely fine because I know sort of my range and what I've worked up to. Does it happen? Yes, you can cut yourself still or hurt yourself in some way, but for the most part, wearing gloves and safety equipment in that way. Goggles or anything like that, you don't need to really worry about that. Wood chips fly, it happens. I don't think you really need to worry about that. If you wear glasses, bonus for you. But there's really not much more in that respect. When it comes to the chopping block and things like that, again, it's all about body positioning, watching where your hands are, going slow into what you're comfortable with. Don't have your fingers in the way. Watch where the axe is going, where the line of sight is, and then also repositioning your body so it's away. If the axe slips off the block, it's going to swing backwards. If your leg is sort of stepped back away from it, you're going to miss yourself. Accidents can happen, but for the most part, you shouldn't be swinging like a wild man or woman. You're pretty much just keeping it in control when you're at the block, and that's where there is high probability for injury if you definitely don't know what you're doing, but you should know what you're doing. I love this one. How long does it take to carve one spoon? That is a tough question because it varies off of the person. If somebody's been carving for 30 years, it might take them, an hour, maybe less. Somebody just started, a couple months ago, it could take them a week. So it depends on the person that you're talking to. For me, if I said I had to carve one spoon from start to finish, and it depends on what you're saying. If I have the billet or the spoon blank, let me show you what I mean. This would be an example of a spoon blank. So if the start to finish with this guy is a different timing than from gathering the wood up and then axing and processing it out. So that's what I think of when somebody says, how long does it take you? It's the processing of the wood itself all the way to the final product. This is not the final product, but it's getting there. Spoon beginning to end would take, I would say, tops hour and a half, probably less than that. And then, if I was doing something called batch carving, which is you're doing a hell of a lot of spoons all at once, that's a different story altogether. That could take a lot longer, or be a lot quicker depending on what you do with the block and how you save time. So that's the questions and answers. That's it right there. I hope everybody was listening on that one and learning. And if you have any other questions or anything like that, please comment below. Ask me anything you want. Like, subscribe, stick around. Man, this fall is going to be crazy. Wait till this thing gets up and rolling. Oh my God. Thanks for sticking around.